Yeah, I wanted to read a motivation that my teacher in Australia, I lived in the nuns community there for several years. And at the beginning of every class, he not every class, but every module, I guess you could say. I don't know what that's what we called them there. I don't know what really we use here. Anyway, series of teachings. He would always start off with a really nice motivation at the beginning of a section, and I saved them all. It's like, oh, this is nice. Not that they're, it's not like they're extraordinary or something. It's just that it's thorough, and he just remembered to do it. I just so appreciated that. So anyway, but this one just fit with what we've been reading about. So I thought I'd read it anyway. So Dharma is practiced in order to reduce the disturbing emotions, eliminating them in order to attain the resultant state of an arhat, or a liberated being, or for the benefit of all beings to attain the state of a Buddha. We should keep this in mind. Some might believe that when studying text and participating in teachings, all one need worry about is trying to develop a positive mind or a good heart, but that in and of itself is not sufficient. What is it that consistently gives us problems and creates difficulties? It is the disturbing emotions, anger, pride, envy, and so forth. We are so thoroughly habituated with these disturbing emotions that they continually arise, creating problems over and over again. In order that our efforts can eliminate the very root of anger, pride, envy, and the other disturbing emotions, we need to study very deeply. Studying in this way, we can eliminate the root of all problems, the misapprehension of the self together with its seeds. In addition to this, we must also keep in mind that our efforts are aimed at attaining Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Buddhahood cannot be attained merely through cultivating the mind of enlightenment and compassion. It occurs only through the integration of method and wisdom. Since this integration is required, loving kindness, compassion, and so forth are not enough. We need to develop wisdom, and that wisdom needs to be deep, for without such wisdom, our efforts will not be perfect. As Lama Tsongkhapa said in the three principal aspects of the path, since enlightenment or Buddhahood cannot be attained merely through familiarizing oneself with renunciation and the mind of enlightenment, that's bodhicitta, we must make effort in the means to realize interdependence. So we need both the extensive, which is the method side, and the profound, which is the wisdom side. Remember, the Buddha said we must understand suffering, and we must understand suffering to be suffering. And to understand this, we must understand the disturbing emotions to be disturbing emotions. So when an individual's emphasis is in making their teachings or tradition appealing and attractive, the danger is that the system will no longer demonstrate how suffering is suffering, but rather encourages others to pursue contaminated pleasures. Ashla never fell for that. So, uh, then to make it a little lighter, he said, for the next 6 weeks, we'll be studying grounds and paths. That's a course where you basically have to memorize 56 definitions. And understanding the definition don't necessarily mean you can remember them. They're kind of complicated definitions. Anyway. And he says Westerners seem to have a very large incidence of the affliction of vital winds, which is called Ling. You might call it a nervous breakdown in English. Oh, this seems strange, as we all have conducive circumstances, great food, nice places to live, yet seem quite subject to afflictions of the vital wind. For this reason, you should keep in mind what the Master Shantideva says. If the situation can be remedied, of what need is there to be upset? If the situation cannot be remedied, of what benefit is it to be upset? So he was reminding us not to worry. Didn't understand it. Oh, well. Keep trying. So, anyway. So, but then, of course, the reason why we're aiming for Buddhahood is because it's not just each of us as individuals who are suffering. Everybody who's stuck in samsara is suffering, whether they know it or not. It's the nature of samsara. So, we want to become complete Buddhists so that we can show others how to get out. Not because we can do it for them, otherwise the Buddhists would have done it for us. So think about your motivation for showing up tonight and try to make it as expansive as possible. That we're doing this in order to increase our compassion, in order to increase our wisdom, in order to increase the tools that we have to overcome the disturbing emotions. And we're doing this not just to benefit ourselves, but so that we can finally reach the end of the path at Buddhahood so that we can truly benefit others. No matter how long that takes. No matter. Okay, so try to sit up like you're awake. It's helpful if your eyes are slightly open, at least to get some light in so you stay awake. That can be helpful. It also helps us with being able not to be distracted by visual things. But if that's distracting, it's okay to close your eyes completely. Now imagine infinite numbers of beings seated all around you, looking forward. By thinking in this way, visualizing in this way, we will share with us whatever merit and benefit is to be gained with all these beings. We are in the form of human beings, and we should try to see the vast space around us completely filled with an assembly of human beings. You might need a few deep breaths to just settle the mind. Now imagine in your mind's eye, at a distance of about an arm's width, in front of us and at the level of our heads, a large golden throne embellished with many jewels. Now visualize a pure white lotus in full bloom. Resting on top of the throne, as big as the throne. It has no flaws or discoloration whatsoever. Inside the lotus is a sun disk, just like a cushion, golden sun disk. On top of that is the moon disk. They are placed on top of one another like round cushions. And upon these sit Shakyamuni Buddha, golden in complexion. He's in the form of a monk wearing saffron-colored robes. His right hand is extended downward, touching the disc upon which he is seated, and his left hand, holding a begging bowl, rests in his lap. Neither the form of Shakyamuni nor any other element in the visualization has even an atom of ordinary solid matter. Instead, everything we see is composed solely of brilliant, vibrant rays of pure light. Now remember that Shakyamuni Buddha is a fully enlightened being, completely purified of obscurations, every dualistic conception, and all distorted views. His knowledge is perfected. He possesses a completely omniscient mind. He has the full power and the skillful means to lead each and every living being out of suffering by teaching pure paths to liberation and enlightenment. In his infinite compassion, he desires to guide everyone, including us, to the immediate cessation of all misery. He has accomplished his own welfare by becoming a fully enlightened being, which means he can help us accomplish our welfare. To do so, we have to do our part by turning our mind to this source of wisdom, power, and compassion. So try to think, I'm going to seek refuge in Buddha, the omniscient mind of Shakyamuni. I'm going to seek refuge in the Dharma, the infinite knowledge and teachings. I'm going to refuge in the Sangha, those who are training their minds in accordance with his teachings. I'm going to take refuge in and completely rely upon these three jewels until I myself reach enlightenment. So we're making this request to please grant help to us and to all living beings. Allow us to receive correct realizations of all the points of the graded path, from guru devotion up to the final achievement of full awakening. Now refresh your visualization of Shakyamuni Buddha. It's radiant, light body, sitting upon a perfect white lotus on a golden throne. Try to feel his presence right in front of you. His eyes gazing upon us, clearly wishing to benefit us. No judgment. Imagine three syllables appear. On his forehead appears a white Om. On his throat, a red Ah. At his heart, a blue Hum. You can visualize these in Tibetan if you're familiar with those, but in English is just fine, or any other language. These syllables are also formed of light rays. The Om is the essence of the unsurpassable knowledge of a Buddha's holy body. The Ah is the essence of the unsurpassable knowledge of a Buddha's holy speech. The Hum is the essence of the unsurpassable knowledge of a Buddha's holy mind. Now visualize this white, red, and blue light, these rays shining forth from these three syllables, entering and purifying us of all the negativities of body, speech, and mind. When we receive the white light from the Om on our own forehead, all the delusions, obscurations, and negativities of the body are purified instantly and no longer exist anywhere. They've been completely obliterated. The red from the Ah at the throat, reaching our throat, purifies all the delusions, obscurations, and negativities of our speech. They're purified instantly and no longer exist anywhere. They've been completely obliterated. The blue light from the Hum at his heart reaches our heart, cleansing us of all impurities, all obscurations, all negativities, all delusions of our mind, completely obliterating them. We are entirely free of all negative karma. Think about the emptiness of all our harmful and confused states of mind. Really trying to feel that these mental obscurations have been destroyed completely. There's a verse on the screen. So still feeling these rays of light. Or if you have the text, it's on some page in the text, 68 maybe. I'm sorry.
In this book, it's page
69. So when you're doing this at home, you have this in front of you, this prayer in front of you. Eventually, if you do this often enough, you'll remember it. Guru, founder, fully realized, destroyer of all defilements, one gone to thusness, bold destroyer, perfectly completed Buddha, magnificent conqueror, sage of the Shakyas. To you I prostrate and go for refuge. To you I make offerings. Please bestow your blessings on me. And then this is Shakyamuni Buddha's name mantra, which is Taya Ta Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Soha. Okay. So just you can recite this silently and just keep trying, just feeling completely filled with these rays of purifying light. And that everybody around you is also receiving these rays of light. So you're thinking of refuge, you're thinking of showing homage to the Buddha and making offerings. All of these things create the merit, creating the cause for meeting the teachings and being blessed by the Buddha's speech. And if you're familiar with the mantra, you can just keep repeating that. Taya Ta Om Muni Muni Maha Muni. So really feel that you've been completely purified, filled with blissful nature. So now bring your blissful selves back to share it with others.
Thank you.
Anybody know the tune for saying the Shakyamuni Buddha mantra? Okay, can you give it a try?
Sure. Ayata Maha Ayata Maha Ayata
So, thank you, Jack. So you can learn that tune if you can carry a tune. I cannot. So I hear it in my mind beautifully. It doesn't come out that way. So, but you can find it online, like if like sometimes even, I'll try to sit, find one for you, but you can usually find it. And so you can listen to it till you learn it, or you can ask Jack for tutorials, so, and I'm so sorry I can't do it for you. So, okay, so who knows what the mantra means? Anybody? I mean, I don't know if you know. So in general, the word mooning, I guess I should have left that up there. Well, you have the books. Yeah. So the three moonies, right? The third moonie has extra syllables. And that represents the capacity of the three beings. So the small capacity being, the middle capacity being, and the great capacity being. And it represents, mooning means kind of control, that, the Buddha has surpassed. Let me put that on gallery, because I keep seeing myself duplicated. So, thank you. So, overcoming the small capacity being is this idea of being a completely giving up attachment to the happiness of this life, and future lives. Basically, you're giving up this idea that there's any happiness in samsara, those external things that we think give us happiness. What did he have to do that? If you're trying to overcome attachment to this, but more than that, you need to understand. What do you need to understand? Why is it that things of samsara don't actually result in bliss? Because they're not lasting. Yes, they're impermanent. So that's one thing you want to really get a handle on. What's the other thing that you need to understand about the causes of what causes pleasantness and unpleasantness? The law of causality, karma. So those are the two main focuses for us to overcome our attachment to the thing. It doesn't mean you don't have to overcome enjoyment of these things. It's the attachment to them. It's the belief that they can bring us happiness. That's the mistake. Thinking that it comes from the side of the object, the happiness or suffering. That's a mistake. It's not accurate. The happiness or suffering we get from is our karma ripening. It's not in the object itself. So if we want continuous happiness, I'm assuming we don't want continuous suffering. We want liberation from this kind of existence. Then we need what you said earlier, renunciation, where you have basically, I think it may be in here. But we need to understand that the sources of our suffering are what?
Our own making.
I'm sorry?
Of our own making.
Yeah, but what are they?
Cravings, desirings.
And what else?
Aversion.
Aversion, our pride, our greed, our jealousy, our selfishness, our what else? I have so many.
Jealousy,
Yeah,
fight,
spite, anger, maliciousness, belligerence, harsh speech, yes, big time. Pride is a big one. We want people to think well of us, and we'll fake it. So we need to really renunciation is knowing that. It's knowing that we have to eliminate our disturbing emotions because they are the causes of suffering. Renunciation is giving up the causes of suffering. That's what we're renouncing.
renouncing the 8 worldly.
Not exactly. We are renouncing all the 8 worldly dharmas come from where? 8 worldly concerns, whatever.
Ignorance.
And that's,
Delusion.
and what is that? What is ignorance? It's a disturbing emotion. It's wrong. So that's something to keep in mind, that those are causes of our suffering. And remember that the pleasures of samsara are what?
Temporary.
They're temporary. What's a fancy name for them? Not really a fancy. What type of suffering is it? Nope. That's like, bam.
Oh, that's suffering.
Yeah. What's suffering?
Suffering of change.
The suffering of change. And when we really look, most of our happiness is really a form of relief from suffering. We're hungry, we eat. We're bored. If you're like me, you eat.
Yeah.
What we want is relief from the dissatisfaction we're having in that moment. And we turn to something. Now, with hunger, it makes sense that you'd eat, because that will stop the hunger. And then if you eat too much, yeah, oops, okay. And then you take something, Pepsid or Tums or whatever these things are. And you promise you won't do that. So we need to start to understand these types of pleasures are really nothing more than a lessening of our dissatisfaction for a moment. You can't even hold on to it. It's like a flavor you like. It's like, don't brush your teeth so the taste of chocolate's still there, but it's gonna go away. And in fact, when it goes away, it's sort of like, now you have to brush your teeth because your teeth feel yucky, So it's this. So in order to be liberated, we really need to get what suffering means, all types of suffering. So we have the suffering of suffering, which is when we get hurt. And even when we're experiencing a loss, that's a type of mental suffering. That's the suffering of suffering. So then there's the suffering of change, which is what we know of as pleasure or happiness. And it's not very satisfying. Yeah, I know. It's just, you've got to be kidding. Now, remember, enjoyment is not a problem. Liking the taste of something liking some friends, like, that isn't the problem. The problem is we superimpose onto the object that happiness is somehow coming from it. Why is that a mistake?
Everything changes. Because it comes from our mind. Is what?
Because it comes from karma. We have that pleasant experience because we did some positive things. So it isn't in the object. It's a condition, but not for everybody, is it? Like I happen to like chocolate. Someone who hates chocolate, it's not a condition for their happiness, for their pleasantness, pleasurableness, So this is something we really have to reflect on, and we have to notice, like you're eating a good meal, you want to pause for a moment and really investigate, what is it that's bringing you happiness or not? So that we don't superimpose onto experiences this added, these couple of extra things, like deliciousness is in the food, like, this person is perfect or almost perfect or good enough, whatever stage of life we're at. And we need to really understand that what we're doing is lessening some dissatisfaction we've had. Like you're lonely, so you spend an evening with friends. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's not coming from the friends. It's that interdependent interaction. And if we haven't created the cause for it to be pleasant, it won't be pleasant. Just think family holiday. Just kidding. I didn't have too many good family holidays. Anyway, okay. So so these reflections and analysis are to help us really understand the first noble truth and the second noble truth, which is what?
There is a cause.
The truth of suffering, and there's the truth of the causes of suffering, the origin of suffering, or however you've heard it said. So what's the third truth? Suffering can end. There's the truth of cessation of suffering. And the last is the truth of the path to the cessation of suffering. So if you're a middle capacity being, you want out of samsara, that uncontrolled death and rebirth kind of cycle that's of the nature of suffering. You've investigated the truth of suffering, the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, the suffering, all pervasive suffering. Or I think in this book it's called extensiveness or something. I don't know.
That's the pervasive suffering. Is the
That's
suffering from the seeds that are planted.
And the fact that all of samsara is born from that. So there's no chance to make samsara a pure land. Samsara is the nature of suffering. It's a manifestation of our disturbing emotions, of the results of our disturbing emotions, disturbing actions, our delusions. So you can't fix samsara, but you can get out.
So a pure land is not in samsara?
No, correct. There are some pure lands that are well, I should say this. There are pure lands that allow non-liberated beings to study there. It takes a lot of merit. It's a good place to end up. So you kind of go think to yourself, oh, may it be reborn in Amitabha's Pure Land or Sukhavati or da 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 da. And if not that, at least a really good human rebirth, with all the causes and conditions to meet the Dharma. Da, 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 da. Biba Rinpoche used to say, you want to be very specific. And that does not mean I want to be born on a beautiful beach, da 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 da. As tempting as that might be, that is the truth of suffering. It's the suffering of change and all pervasive suffering. You want to be born in conditions where you meet the Dharma, where you can learn the Dharma, where you understand, you have the capacity to understand the Dharma, like speaking the same language as the teachers. It's really helpful. But in a Pure Land, the sound of everything is Dharma. It's just continual Dharma because it's a manifestation of enlightened beings. Karma, you could say, but it's not that, of just their, perfected good qualities. Unlike samsara, which is a manifestation of our imperfect everything. Yes. Yeah.
Then having a child.
Yeah.
And the opportunity to reborn through this child or children.
To have children.
Yeah, it's a big compassion action.
Yes. To have, yes. So the plus side, on the plus side, the pros of having children, having family, is your opportunity to develop your compassion, to develop your selflessness, to develop all kinds of things, all kinds of good qualities, generosity, da 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 da. It's also what? A condition for what? What? What's it a condition for?
More suffering.
Attachment.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. So Lamas of Rinpoche said often that the kindness of parents is how much negative karma they accumulate due to their attachment to their children. Wow, yes. That takes some reflection. But you're right. Some people say, oh, but if there were no children, there'd be no, opportunity to become enlightened. Well, if there are no children, we're probably already ahead of the game, So, because children are born. When we're out of samsara, none of that has to happen. You just are. In your little body of light, which is actually probably quite big because it, doesn't take up space.
So you're bodiless.
Yeah, you're basically, yes, if we see an enlightened being, if we have the merit to go to a Pure Land, or we're an Arya Bodhisattva and we can get teachings in a Pure Land, what we see is the Sambhogakaya, which are made of bodies of light. That's what you see. Okay. So all these depictions this is in the Sambhogakaya form. They're in silks and, they have jewels, they're not in the form of a monk. They're in the form of, hey, I'm beautiful.
This is real.
Yeah, but if they take that form, so the Arya Bodhisattvas can see them. Because Arya Bodhisattvas are not fully enlightened yet. They can't be aware of the presence of Buddhas. All they can do, this is why Buddhas have, to be a complete Buddha, you have to have a Dharmakaya, which is the mind and the emptiness of the mind of the Buddha. And you have to have a Rupakaya, which is the form body. Shakyamuni Buddha took a form body that actually ordinary beings could see. They couldn't tell that he was a Buddha. They didn't know that. They had to learn that, or deny that, depending on your merit, like poor old cousin Devadatta. But, so that's what makes Shakyamuni Buddha so special, is that he actually came to samsara, born as a samsaric being, so that ordinary beings could see him and receive teachings. Most Buddhas spend all their time in Pure Lands teaching bodhisattvas. Not because they're selfish, but you know. None. They're different. There's a Nirmanakaya is a type of Rupakaya. So Shakyamuni Buddha was a supreme Nirmanakaya.
Came up with all this.
The Buddha told us all this. The Buddha told us all this because we have no other way of knowing until we become, once you're an Arya Bodhisattva, you can see all these beings. So there's a point at which you know. We're not at that point. We don't have enough merit. So, yuck. This is why this part of the path, or pre-path, is so difficult. We have to use the intelligence we have, which is why our human brain is so important as a physical support for our mind, to really, you know, check it out. Think about it, use our logic, see, you know, what we already understand about cause and effect in the physical world, you know, apply that knowledge to the idea that maybe consciousness has cause and effect operating too, past and future lives, all of this kind of stuff.
When you're talking about like the I consciousness, how all pervading that is, the ego consciousness and I consciousness.
The icon, that's our ignorance, yes.
But is that a separate meditation than the specific moments of anger and greed and like?
Yeah, that's what we have to counter all kinds of things, right? So one of the things we want to try to counter are all the disturbing emotions that arise, like anger and greed and pride and stuff, that when they arise in the mind, that we kind of go, oh, this isn't going to lead where I think it's going to lead. And we want to think about that so that when it arises, we kind of go, I'm not following that mind. You know, it takes time. And then there's also this, okay, the Buddha says that our perception of the I in particular, but everything else too, is wrong. We see this label, I, that's just on a body and mind, as something more than that. We put on it just like we do with chocolate cake, where we put deliciousness in it. I put hindrance in this body and mind. It has a whole story, you know, all this kind of stuff, you know. Well, I'll never be able to find Tendron in this body and mind. All I'll find is the parts of this label Tendron. But we grasp on to this body and mind and make it into something, you know, repulsive some days, you know, delightful some days, but at all times, something to preserve at all costs, you know, something to cater to. And the Buddha said that's one of the primary mistakes we make, is we don't understand that actually happiness is in understanding interdependence, understanding that things are just this collection of parts, you know, that we have consciousness, which is also a collection of parts, just a series of moments of mind, you know, and that we can take control of that. Instead of following our habits that we've been developing forever and forever and forever, you know, we can go, you know, this greed and this envy and this, they're not working for me. They end up making me miserable. Other people don't like me because of them. What can I do about it? Well, we use our reasoning and our experience to say, okay, I'm going to change this habit.
Yeah, some of this sounds so far out.
Of course it does.
I mean, and you gotta understand that.
Who has to understand? You.
I am trying to understand, okay,
Yeah.
Because I do think a lot of it's been far out there. You have, you know, a Buddha that was eating one rice a day. You have to wonder if something wasn't going on, you know, in the brain activity to create something in the mind that was real or wasn't real.
I don't think I follow. It's not that what we experience isn't real. I mean, it exists. We can bump into things, we can da da da. It exists. It doesn't exist in the way that we interpret it. It isn't that we're just all living in this, in our consciousness are just floating somewhere, and this is all our imagination, and we actually don't interact and da 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 da. None of that. That's not what it's saying.
This has anything about emptiness?
Emptiness is the correct view of how things exist. What we have now is a wrong view, and we give it the label ignorance. And it is huge. You have to read up a lot, and you have to then think about it. And then you have to kind of go, yeah, I'm putting that on the shelf. I mean, it took me years, you know, just in, you know, I can't say I buy into all of it. I just have found with my experience and my studies and my thinking about it, that most of it makes sense to me. So possibly the whole thing makes sense. And I do take quite a bit of refuge in the fact that we will find out if we do the work. It's not like you don't go from being an ordinary being to a Buddha and then suddenly know everything. No, it's a process. And so all along the way, you'll be developing your knowledge about how things actually exist. And also our knowledge about the fact that our holding on to certain habits of body, speech, and mind are not skillful and don't lead us where we want to go at all. Does that make sense? But yeah, you're right. It is a view of the entire system of existence that's different from the view that we've been raised with, that we, you know, all kind of stuff. And it's also different from, you know, most ordinary beings, just in the sense that ordinary beings are caught up with ignorance. So we, you know, our habit is completely to grasp at things existing in a way that they do not. And that's very difficult to realize. We had to really work at it. You know, lamas of Rinpoche at retreats would just put signs up. He didn't put them up himself. He might have, or in the early days, but later on he asked his students to put signs. So don't imagine Zopa Rinpoche walking around putting signs up. You know, that would say things like, remember, this tree is empty. Remember, this is impermanent and empty, you know, just as a way for us to be thinking about it all the time, because we usually don't think about it at all. Yeah. You know, but that's one of those things that you can think about when you're taking a walk. Huh. So the sidewalk's empty, you know, or the grass is empty, or the people you see walking past you or lapping you or walking towards you are all empty. What does that mean? Well, they're empty of existing the way I'm holding them to exist. This is much more obvious when we see a friend or an enemy. Because in that moment, we are grasping at something. With our friends, we're grasping at what we like about them. With our enemies, we're grasping at something we don't like about them.
You can see this very clear now in the politics
Yeah,
subject,
yeah,
grasping or aversion. So
Yeah.
deep.
yeah. Yes, exactly. And that's why the Buddha said it's really helpful to think about those times when you get praised and you get, you know, there's a part of you that just feels, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
I am great. That's grasping at an eye. And the same is true when someone insults us and we think, that's grasping at an eye. Now, if we had equanimity and we didn't grasp, what would our response be?
Compassion.
No, when someone praises or criticizes you.
It's polite to say thank you.
That can be a response to praise, certainly. But what is the mind doing? This is what we want to focus on. Our words matter, but what we want to focus on is what is a way to respond to that? What is another choice of my mind for my mind?
Don't believe it.
Yeah, not getting hooked into what they
Not
say.
getting hooked. Not going, my mood about feeling good about myself has nothing to do with what this person said, whether it's true or not. I have value, period. I don't need any praise, or I may have done this well, but I do a lot lousy. We have balance with it. We don't, we're on a roller coaster because we're constantly hooked. Now, it might not be by someone's words. It may be because, oh, now I'm getting something I like to eat. Now there's a television show I like to watch. Now there's a good book I'm reading, whatever. We're just, we're being just carried through the day by our preferences and our what's the other word? Dislikes, our likes and dislikes. And since we are looking at these things as if there's something from the side of the object that contains these qualities,
That's what's so hard to understand. Because, like say I like Jack because he has qualities that I like.
that you like to be around. Let's get more specific.
He likes racing.
There's no Jack.
We need to understand that our relationships are determined by whether we like what they give us.
Yes, but they have something. They
Mhm.
are.
That
I don't get, maybe I'm.
That's grasping. That's exactly what grasping is. Oh, but they are nice. You think everybody likes Jack?
No.
Well, when he does a nice thing.
Then he's
we're all
likable.
gonna
That's
like
good.
him.
You should, yeah, actually.
Maybe.
Email I would say.
Maybe. It's not even true that just because they do a nice thing, everybody will like them. There were people who hated the Buddha.
I don't get reality then.
Yes, and you are really on the mark there. And that's good, because that's what we need to question. We right now think in terms of, well, if I like this, everybody's going to like this. And that's not true. And we can check that out by just thinking about it.
Kindness isn't something.
Perceiving someone's kindness is variable.
Yeah.
You sure about that?
Yes, perceiving kindness.
Yeah.
is
So that's all
variable.
that's all we can do, right?
Right.
That's all we can act with.
We're imputing
No?
we're imputing that it's kind.
We're imputing,
Well,
we're labeling something that is kind.
we're
And
labeling
maybe
it.
most people would agree that,
We
oh, yes,
label-
that's kind. But we go another step.
Inherent-
We
good
impute
qualities that are
inherent
there.
kindness to Jack, not that moment. And so he's our friend.
In that moment, is that reality or no? It's not
Conditional, it's
reality.
conditional.
There are events that are kind, but will everybody see every kind action that Jack takes? Let's assume that we're right. That as kind. How about somebody who goes, would you quit butting into my business? I can do this myself. I don't need your help.
Is that okay to say that?
You're not listening. What is that person feeling? Is he thinking that Jack's action is kind?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
What would somebody who says that be thinking? Just use your logic,
Well,
not,
that person is, bothering me.
okay?
I don't want him to tell me how to do anything.
Right, so he thinks Jack is an interfering so-and-so. Not kind. And you're over there thinking, I think it was really kind of kind. So our problem is we think someone's inherently right in that situation. Either you're right or this person over here is right. And neither are right. It's just a different perspective on the same event, which is why in politics, we all have different opinions. We have different perspectives, different points of view. And we grasp at the idea that we are right and they are wrong. And that's a problem. It doesn't mean we don't have to make decisions. It doesn't mean we don't have to go, oh, I wouldn't do that. I don't want to do that. We need to make those choices, but judging people based on our choices is making it all about us. And that's reifying people according to our perspective. Jack's a kind person. I can't think of an example of an unkind person in this moment.
Either kind or unkind.
Yep, that's the other problem.
You're labeling and then imputing an inherent existence of some quality.
What's the first thing you said?
As soon as you label something, you impute.
Labeling is not the problem.
No, the imputing is the problem.
It's the grasping. No, not even the
grasping.
It's the superimposition. It's when you add something extra to it.
Like sometimes you hear people say somebody's evil.
Yes.
It's not true.
Yep. Why would that not be true?
Because it's only that one act you see.
Or it might be millions of acts, because we can look historically.
But it's the ignorance that
Of.
causes of the person that causes for her to do something that it appears to be evil.
Or is it the
And somebody,
person
like,
seeing it is the one that
like
doesn't
Johnny
have
did.
the knowledge?
Somebody hits you with a stick. Why are you mad at the person and not the stick?
Well, because the stick can't get up and do it.
That's right.
But why is he hitting you with the stick?
Because you created the cause to be hit by a stick.
And he's being ignorant.
Well, we don't even need to get into that because you can't read his mind.
So isn't the ignorance in me?
Yes,
Maybe
ignorance is in all of us ordinary
Okay.
beings, but we don't know if someone we're with is ignorant or not because we can't see Buddhas and Bodhisattvas because we don't have enough mirror. Bodhisattvas can tell others are Bodhisattvas. They can see that quality.
What's the difference? I don't know bodhisattva.
Bodhisattva is someone who has an uncontrived, meaning 24/7, all the time, mind that wants to become enlightened for the benefit of others.
And they're in the same sphere. I don't know how to say, in the same sphere. As
Yeah, there's still
Buddha?
samsara. They're not liberated. No, they're
Oh.
not liberated yet.
Oh,
Once they're liberated, once they have reached full enlightenment, they're Buddhas. Before then, they're not Buddhas. But they go through phases.
So was lamas also bodhisattva?
I think so, but I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
So a bodhisattva.
Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Some people felt he was a Buddha.
I mean, behaved like one, right? In terms of
That is not how you tell. We can only make assumptions based on behavior. Well, we're still grasping because of our ignorance. And that ignorance obscures our ability to see whether they're Buddhas or Bodhisattvas.
Mhm.
which is why it's dangerous to criticize anybody, because you'd be criticizing a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. And that is negative karma. But we kind of can't worry about that. First, we want to stop criticizing others. We can worry about the details later. So, but what is maddening at this stage of the game, because this is where the hard work is that we have to develop our inner wisdom going, okay, so far I can agree with the fact that, this idea that self-centeredness driving my actions doesn't lead to my actual happiness or peace. However, that when I do less of that, I find that I sleep better and I'm happier with myself. That's about as far as I can go. But I'm going to do that because that makes sense to me. And then when I, reflect more and reflect more and reflect more, then I think there's something to this idea that of superimposition. And I grasp onto things as having qualities that they couldn't possibly have, including chocolate cake. And that leads to suffering. And so that's the kind, so slowly, I've just gathered more information about the path that makes sense to me. And I also do it backwards. Okay, if somebody's a Buddha, what kind of qualities would they have to have? Well, they certainly would have to know everything about everything. Otherwise, you make a mistake. So if he's omniscient, that I think he would have to be omniscient. I'm not saying I believe anybody can do it, but I'm just saying that, yes, I think that's true. So the description of what a Buddha is makes sense to me. And then what you have to do to get there. So I go backwards, I go, okay, to be an Arya Bodhisattva, to be, blah, 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 which means you're liberated or almost liberated. Most Arya Bodhisattvas are liberated, let's put it that way. Because on the 6th ground or 7th ground or 8th ground, you're out of samsara, which starts with the realization of emptiness, seeing things as things actually are. So, you kind of go backwards.
Can we really see things as they actually are?
I can't at the moment, but yes, that's what the Buddha said, is that we can learn to do it. And we'll have an experience of it. It won't just be our intellect going. It will be that we will actually experience things as they actually are. That's called a direct perception of emptiness. And that makes us an Arya being.
But if everything is empty, how is there anything?
Because empty does not mean non-existence. Empty means that they don't exist inherently. It's not, well, that's hard. You have to study up. It's hard. But it doesn't mean not existent. It doesn't mean, it means there's something that we're adding in our perception of something that isn't there. It's not that when you remove that, nothing's there. No, exactly what's always been is there. Our misperception is no longer there. That's it.
So an Arya being or Buddha sees conditional reality, but knows that it's empty.
Arya beings know that
They
it's
do
not
see
true,
They do see things the way we see it, but they just know
that it's false.
That it's false. That there's
We see everything as a
empty and
conventional truth. I mean, that's what we call it in Buddhism. It's a conventional truth. Arya beings know it's false. Like what Buddhists see is the enlightened nature of all of us. Because, he's not obscured by our ignorance. So he even has a better opinion than we do. So. He doesn't really have an opinion about ourselves. You can kind of go, hey, what are you finding there? So anyway, I know it's a big thing, but you have to go slowly. You can expose yourself to all, and I encourage people to do those, you're reading Presenting the Path, or, and you read books. This covers Introduction to Tibetan Buddhism by John Powers, goes through the whole 9 yards, more, just a straightforward way. And what's important though, when you read these things, is that you go, don't get that, and you just put it on the shelf, because you're going to learn other stuff later that you might be able to put that piece of the puzzle into. You don't want to close doors, because if you close doors, you're saying no, and you become an upside down pot with nothing can get into. But it's hard. Yep.
Always when you read about enlightenings and we hear about their guru,
Yeah.
what the difference teacher and a guru,
Nothing. It's different language, same word.
and how we can choose a guru, or
You just have to keep investigating someone. Like, people usually, it takes a few years, like they say basically at least 12.
Oh, wow.
Other people meet someone and literally they say the hairs on the back of their neck stand up. Well, that shows that they had a karmic relationship in previous lives. And so they just are in their presence and they have this reaction to them. Some of us don't have that karma to have that experience, and at least in this life. So I remember sitting in class one day looking at my teacher in Australia and realizing he has all the qualities of the teacher. It was like, well, this is nice, But it's just, I'm a really hard sell, so, guru devotion, but I understand why it's so effective. I'm just not there yet. I can believe people are teachers, great teachers, lamas of a Rinpoche. Can't imagine. No action I've ever heard of, no speech I've ever heard from Rinpoche was anything less than what a Bodhisattva would do, an Arya Bodhisattva would do. Is he a Buddha? I'm not going to go that far. Because I'm like that. It has nothing to do with Lama Zopa Rinpoche. It has to do with my mind and my fear of being wrong. So, that's a disturbing emotion I have. But better slowly than too fast. Yeah. So, but I don't have any trouble with seeing His Holiness the Dalai Lama as a teacher. Do I see him as a Buddha? No, but most Tibetans would. I haven't, I'm just not there yet.
Well, isn't that like a practice?
Yeah, it's a practice.
Devotion.
Oh yeah. Now, if you take an initiation from somebody, you're supposed to see them as a Buddha. So that's a practice. I do that. I'm just very successful with convincing myself.
I have trouble even listening to him talking.
Well, you may
Read his
not have
book.
his teachings.
I don't have the karma to listen, but I can read his books.
Well.
If somebody else is
Well,
reading.
that's your obstruction. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have obstruction.
So
There are many teachers out there that I go, can't, it's like, I'll read their book. And actually there's some I can't even read their book. So, but these are just our obscuration, preventing us from learning from these people. That's why it's so important to set aside your preferences. If somebody's, His Holiness says, oh, so-and-so is a great teacher. Hey, I'd listen to that, If a lot of people that you respect and you think are in the right direction on their path, and they say, oh, this person has a lot to offer, you listen to that. And you listen to the teacher, but it doesn't mean they're your teacher. That's a heartfelt.
I found like getting to what you said, I have found, even though sometimes it might be hard to listen to, if you listen to them and then wait,
I've heard that.
and then read, like his lecture, it helps me hear him
Oh,
when
yeah,
I'm reading it.
and it's changed so much, when before he showed the aspect of a stroke,
Well,
he
yeah,
coughed constantly
right.
when he spoke English. Didn't cough when he spoke Tibetan. Then through speech therapy, after when he was for rehab for that stroke, he didn't cough anymore when he spoke English. So I didn't have any trouble because by then I was way familiar with his accent. So that didn't cause me any trouble. But I think it's also just obscurations. We have obscurations. Most people, when they first start going to listen to a Tibetan teacher, struggle with the accent, even, and so they give up on the teachings of the person, and which is a huge mistake. It's our obstacle. So, it's no different than like I had a call one time when I was in Australia, some helpline or some information line, and it was someone from Asia answering the phone, and I could not understand a word they were saying. I kept going, I'm sorry, I'm an American in Australia, and I just can't understand the accent. Can you go slower? Please go slower. Can you spell it? And it was just horrible, but it was definitely my obscuration. They weren't pronouncing anything wrong. It was just that I couldn't understand it. So, we need to remember that we can't receive teachings from all teachers because of our own obscurations, our own, that's what they say. They say that ignorance literally is like a thick fog that falls, that it just obscures your ability to hear, see, do, follow the advice of a teacher. You just don't even hear it. Or your perspective is completely different. Like, what's he on about? He sounds like a crazy person. What, I mean, we do all sorts of things, and everybody else around us is going. I was at a retreat with Lamas of Rinpoche in 2004 for a month. All the nuns around me were running out of pages on their notebooks. They had like on their third notebook. I heard 2 teachings the whole time. I just couldn't hear him ever. I mean, it was just like 2 teachings. I heard a teaching on emptiness, and I heard a teaching on the kindness of sentient beings to come into your house to be able to ripen them. This is when the nun's house was completely infested with cockroaches. So I didn't go home and kill them, even though I was awfully tempted. And those are the only 2 teachings I heard. Out of 30 days, and many teachings, many hours. Yeah. So, nobody else had trouble. I'm a heavily obscured being. So, but eventually I had no trouble. And I'm sure, I mean, the first Light of the Path retreat in 2009, so that was 5 years later. This is, he coughed through all his teeth. But I tell you, that first year, and I was running it, so didn't get any sleep, anything. But I went to his teachings every night, and they were he gave 25 teachings. It was unbelievable. In 2 weeks, it was unbelievable. And I didn't have any trouble hearing, not at all. But karma, things change, conditions change. We finally have enough merit. So we think we don't, we might not understand anything today. That doesn't mean we won't understand things next week. I mean, it's just a matter of merit and karma writing. So that's good news. All right. So keep reading the text. Or in chapter 6. Where am I looking? you have the prayers? Yeah, I have them too, somewhere. I just can't find the book. There it is. There's the book. So,
Got it.
so it's in the book. It's page what page is it? 235, maybe? 230, yeah, 235. So now we want to rejoice in the effort we're trying to make. I mean, this stuff is not easy. And every time, even our doubt can have merit if it's genuine, just you're trying to understand and you haven't figured it out, So we want that effort, that willingness to think about something from a different perspective, because that right there, they say that shatters our ignorance. Just the fact that we even consider it's possible we don't see things as they actually are. So we want to rejoice in that. And we want to rejoice, we can rejoice in all the Buddhists and Bodhisattvas out there who understand this, because they have lots of merit. And we earn like half of their merit or something, so we want to be generous with that merit. All right. Everybody see it? Okay. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may we quickly attain the state of Guru Buddhas and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Just as brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra realize things as they are, I too dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by the victorious ones thus gone at the 3 times, so I might perform good works. I dedicate whatever virtues I have ever collected for the benefit of the teachings of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of perfect, pure Losang Drapa to shine forever. On page, I don't know what page this is. What page is this?
244.
240. Let's read the first 2 paragraphs, or maybe the first 3. Okay. Due to the merits accumulated over the 3 times by myself and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, which are empty from their own side, may I, who is empty from its own side, achieve the state of enlightenment, which is empty from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are empty from their own side to that state as quickly as possible by myself alone. Because of these merits, may my actions never cause even the slightest harm to any sentient being. Instead, may they bring only the greatest benefit. Whatever suffering or happy life I experience, may it be only of the greatest benefit to others, causing them to achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. And now page 244. In the land encircled by snow mountains, were the stores of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And then on page what is it?
With return.
Yeah,
34.
234. Fearless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, You wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss! Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and by the great waves of bodhicitta, the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Turn off the recording. So thank you guys. Great to see you. And